Good afternoon. It's once again Friday at 5:30 in the p.m. And of course, this is your host, Congressman Danny Davis, for the next 25 minutes of Hotline 21. Well, we've actually been on Easter recess for 2 weeks. That doesn't mean that we have not been working. That does not mean that business has been going on. What it does mean is that we have not been having legislative enactment. We've been arguing, but we've been doing it on social media. We've been doing it on radio, doing it on television. We've been doing it in the press. What we have not been doing is passing any bills. I've been home meeting, and I usually have had some real busy days every day. Today, for example, I was out at Oakwood Cemetery for a burying of Mr. Eltrada Brad, who's 90 years old. He's a 90-year-old veteran. I spent time with his family there, and he had a real nice going away. I had a meeting scheduled with Mr. Darrell Glass to talk about how does he find a good, decent place to work, and how does he make money with his business. I just finished meeting with Miss Victoria Norris Brown and her husband and her son and their daughter, and we had a nice, wonderful chat. I knew her father and mother. Her father has passed on. He was Nick Charles Norris, and of course, he used to be head of the Born Losers Motorcycle Club. He also was a leader among cyclists, and at one time the Born Losers owned 3 service stations that I'm aware of. Tonight we've got the Defender Men of Excellence. We also have the New Life Deliverance Ministerial Alliance dinner, and I'm going to try to make both of those. One, because my sister-in-law is actually the pastor of this church, and if I don't get to their banquet, they'd be a little upset, not to say the least disappointed. But I'm delighted to have in the studio with me a guest, and we're going to be talking about health care. I have with me Miss Victoria
Tauginas, yes.
Tauginas, all right, from the Lupus Foundation of America, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I am delighted to have you.
Thank you.
I've known a number of individuals who have had lupus themselves. One of the first people that I hired when I got elected to Congress was a young woman who had lupus. Unfortunately, she has passed away. But we spend a great deal of time with health care. My congressional district, the 7th District of Illinois, has 24 hospitals in it. We have a large number of what is known as federally qualified health centers. And I've spent a fair amount of time this week at the Miles Square Center on yesterday, and at the University of Illinois, where I spoke with a group of health students who get in their master's degrees in public health. So health has been a big week. Tell us about lupus.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for your invitation to be on your program. And I also want to thank you for being such a wonderful employer of people who are suffering from lupus, because not everybody is very understanding. So thank you very much. Lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease which can affect multiple areas of your body. It can range from skin and joints to major organs, heart, lungs, kidneys, brain. It affects mostly women. 90% of the people who have lupus are women. And roughly 10% are men. So we don't get very much attention because they call it the mysterious disease, because you don't know what it's going to do. You don't know how it's going to affect people. If you have 5 people in a room, all 5 of them could be affected differently. And even within the same person, you don't know how it's going to affect you from one time to another. So it's a very complicated, mysterious disease.
Do we have a cure? Can it be cured? Or
there
do we
is-
say that there's a cure?
There is no cure. They also don't know where it comes from. They have no idea what causes it. We have only one medication that has been developed specifically for lupus. The medications that are used are borrowed from other illnesses. There's a variety of them, and they don't have very good side effects either.
Well,
So-
let me ask you, does that mean that we need to do a great deal of additional research to try and find what works, or find a cure, or find a better way of treating the disease?
Actually, we need a lot of research in a lot of areas. One of them is, yes, of what we can do to help people who do have it. We also need to find out what the causes are. And then from there, once you know what the cause is, then maybe you can come up with a cure. But right now, I think the big push is to, at least with our Lupus Foundation, when I went to the summit where I met you last month, they were talking about the mesenchymal stem cell research, and that's in phase 2 right now. And it started in China, and they gave these stem cells to people, and one of the women that we met there had been on 18 different medications and was given the therapy and is walking, and she's on one medication. It's phenomenal. So that's one of the areas that they're looking at. They're also thinking of going back to some of the medications that they've had before but have been shelved by the FDA because it didn't work the way they wanted it to work, and they think that those need to be revisited because, as I said, you have 5 different people. They're all completely different in terms of how they react to things, so what might work for one person will not necessarily work for another person.
Do we know how many people basically are affected by this disease in our country now?
In our country, the estimate is 1.5 million. Worldwide, the estimate is 5 million. And it turns out that people of color, women of color, are the ones who are more affected than others, 2 to 3 times that of Caucasians. So it's not a good disease to have.
So it's a mysterious disease. We don't know nearly as much about it as we need to learn. We don't know exactly where it comes from or exactly what causes it. And so we need to spend a lot of work. I know my callers have been trying to get in, so let me let them know that we have opened up now for calls. You can give us a call. Our number is 312-738-1060, and we'll go right to the telephone. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, I got two comments, Connie Davis.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
They closing this, okay, I want to tell you again, they closing this, close this hospital, western, in the suburb, but they reopening. But Connie Davis.
Westlake Hospital you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And yes. My second comment, when you talk about the church, and then it was a tragedy last week in the country, and people were trying to blame Donald Trump for it. And I don't know what to say, Connie Davis. It was no protection, and then how can they protect people if they then the bomb and they still kill people at the church now? I don't know. I don't get it, Connie Davis.
Well, let me just say that I do know something about that country. You're talking about Sri Lanka. I have been there. It was a 24-hour airplane ride for me to get there from here. And I went to take a look at the impact of the tsunami that had hit the country and devastated it. But I also was looking at the friction that existed at that time between the government and a group called the Tamils. Since then, they were having a civil war. They've had a ceasefire. There's still some hard feelings and issues, but I don't think that had anything in particular to do with the church bombings that I think were atrocious. Our country is trying to help look into it, and we have provided assistance. I don't think there's anybody who can definitively say that President Trump is the cause of this activity. I don't think so, and I don't have any reason to suspect that he is. We've got another caller. We'll go right ahead. Caller, are you there?
Hi, good evening, Danny, and good evening to your guest. I want to talk about health care. I think we'd all agree that health care is in a sorry state in this country, and there certainly aren't any easy answers, and we know that utopia is not an option. But I think it's worth exploring that government rules and regulations have created an overdue a burden on taxpayers to get quality health care. And even your esteemed guest this evening was talking about lupus. And Danny, you yourself, you've never met a tax increase you didn't like. So if you didn't tax us at almost half our income across the board, do you think we'd have more money to put towards finding, good solid research for lupus and maybe possibly coming up with a cure?
I think we can, if we put as many people to work. You see, I believe, and I don't know what you believe, but I believe that part of the problem we have in our country is too few people have too much control of the resources, and too much of the money is in the hands of just a few people, and the money isn't spread out enough so that it can be used as effectively. I think if we do that and get more people to working so that they are contributing to the well-being of the country as opposed to being liabilities in a way, or having to drain the economy. I think that's a part of the problem. Let me ask my guest if she'd like to weigh in on that.
Well, some of the money for the research comes from the government, and there is a lot of research money that comes from the private sector. For example, in May is Lupus Awareness Month, and in May, in New York, they're having a walk to end lupus now on May 4th. And in Chicago, they're having a walk on June 9th. And this is money that is going to be collected for the Lupus Foundation of America. The Lupus Foundation of America is one of the main organizations that fights for lupus. They're advocates. They give money for research. They have lots of education, and they have health people who help out. They've got programs for lupus patients to talk to each other. So there are things from the private sector, and there are things from the government.
And I do believe that taxation is the price that we pay for a civilized society. But I think the big question about paying taxes is trying to make sure that it's fair and that we are taxing on the basis of fairness. Now that's tough. It's tough because fairness, like beauty, is often in the eye of the beholder. If you ask a bird, is it fair for birds to eat worms? The bird will probably say yes. But if you ask the worm is subject to have a different answer. So finding what is fair is not always easy. Let's take our next caller. Caller, are you there?
Good evening, Dr. Davis, U.S. Representative 7th District. I want to take care of one little bit of housekeeping. One, you earned the title, at the very least, U.S. Representative, and the last caller was very disrespectful. You are a person of good character. You will be considered a person, you will be considered a great man, and I want to make my comment about the current president and about research. If I'm wrong about anything, still free to stop me. When you look at the current president, he have cut a lot of money in research, and in the middle of the night, some cuts have been done to Medicare as well. Even though with my bad eyesight, I do try to be informed about different things. And when you got a president that don't have no empathy towards people at all, he just care about millionaires, not the middle income people at all. And we look at who he care about, he gave the top bracket in terms of like what the upper 2%, the biggest tax hike there is. And we look at one of the biggest things that concern the middle income is health care. And this man have cut research and Medicare. Please comment on it. If I'm wrong about anything, I can make a mistake. That's the reason why they have erasers on pencils.
You said hike, but you mean he gave a tax break to the wealthiest 1% in the country. And of course, wealthy 2% wouldn't be too far behind. So I disagreed with the tax policy that did that. I think we ought to put more money into research, because if we don't, we may never find a cure for lupus. And there are instances where we've put money into research, and diseases that used to be certainly death, now people are living years and years and years beyond. Caller, are you there?
Yes, so you were talking about tax fairness, but you have the top 3% of the people paying about 70% of all the taxes. And Danny, you haven't even addressed your desire to continue raising taxes, which takes more money out of our pockets. So how are we going to have money to donate to the Lupus Foundation or anything else when all you think about and you see us as dollar signs and not Americans, not constituents?
Let me tell you, I would have no problem at all paying a couple more $100 in taxes, or $300, or $400. I wouldn't have a problem doing that, but I'd also be trying to make sure that it went to where I wanted it to go, to research, not to defense spending. I would want it to go to food stamps. I'd want it to go to health care. I want it to go for decent housing for people who are homeless. So yeah, I must confess that I have some liberal or what I would call progressive thoughts about taxation. Yeah, I'd try to get a little bit more, but I'd want to use it as wisely as I could. And I think we have to I think you can measure the effectiveness of a society by how well it treats its young people, how well it treats its old people, and how well it looks after those who cannot necessarily look after themselves. If you have lupus, you have difficulty looking after yourself. And so research, finding a cure, would fall into that category. For me, I'd much rather have $100 less and know that scientists are on the verge of saying, we think we've got a cure, or we're close to it. Like right now, they're saying they think we've got a cure for sickle cell anemia. That we're getting close, and we think we're going to be able to do it. I have a friend who's had 2 heart transplants and a kidney transplant and is doing well. Without the research that was done and without the medical science advancement, I don't think he'd be able to say that. And he wouldn't be doing well. So, hey, yep, I admit I'm in favor of generating the money that we need to make a better world and make the world a better place in which to live. Go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank you because when I did go to the Lupus Summit on the Hill, not many legislators met with their constituents who came from the lupus advocacy group. So I know that you're very helpful and your concern is there, and I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you. If we're not doing that, what are we doing? You know, when I run for office, I ask people to vote for me, not so that I can represent myself, but so that I can represent them. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not representing them, then there's no point in my being in office. I mean, so yeah, I'm going to try as hard as I can to represent those who sent me, or those who put me in place. I want to thank you for your advocacy. I want to thank you for the time that you spend trying to help educate members of Congress and other people that if we put enough research in some of these mysterious illnesses, we'll find a solution. You've got the last word.
Oh, well, thank you. One of the things that I did want to present was the lupus awareness. Again, the May is Lupus Awareness Month. The May 10th is the World Lupus Day. May 17th is the day to wear purple to help people become more aware of lupus. June 9th is our Walk to End Lupus in Chicago at Montrose Harbor. And can I do a plug on a film?
Yes, indeed. Our time is about up.
Okay.
And we've got to run out of here so that the next group can come in. But
This is I told you about this before. It is a film that my son wrote as a lupus awareness film, and it is available on Amazon, and all proceeds will be going to the Lupus Foundation.
right on for your son, right on for you. He's obviously a very talented gentleman, and we're so delighted that we've had you. Thanks to all of my viewers and all of those who called in. Be good to yourself. Be good to somebody else. We'll see you next week.